Hello, Scooby Doo fans! Welcome to my Season 1 Episode 6 review of the new Scooby Doo movies. So last time I reviewed Season 1 Episode 1 of Scooby Doo Where Are You? I started my re-reviews of that, so if you want to see my updated thoughts on the very first episode of Scooby Doo Where Are You? And Scooby Doo as a whole, you can go check that out. But of course today, I'll be covering Season 1 Episode 6 of the new Scooby Doo movies, titled A Good Medium is Rare, which was released on October 14th, 1972. The short synopsis of the episode is, when Mystery Inc. returned a lost dog to its owner, Phyllis Diller, they learn that someone is trying to trick her out of her jewels. Does it have something to do with Madame Zokar and the Magic Mansion? So today's guest star is Phyllis Diller. Now, who is Phyllis Diller? Well, like the past two guest stars, she's very much like a more old-timey, celebrity. So, like I said with the other two past guest stars, if you're someone older who was probably around in the 60s or 70s, you probably have an idea of who Phyllis Diller is. But if you're someone my age or younger, you probably aren't too familiar with Phyllis Diller. At least I wouldn't think so. So here's just a quick rundown of who Phyllis Diller is. So Phyllis Diller was an American stand-up comedian and actress born on July 17th, 1917 in Lima, Ohio. She was one of the first female comedians to become a household name in the U.S., and she was best known for her eccentric stage persona, her self-deprecating humor, her wild hair and clothes, and her exaggerated cackling laugh. Her comedy routine consisted of her ineptitude as a mother, her fictitious husband Fang, and her looks overall. So she began her acting career in 1958 when she was a contestant on a comedy quiz show called You Bet Your Life, where she was a contestant on there, and that garnered attention for her, and she did stand-up comedy, and she also started to get roles. So here are some of Phyllis Diller's most memorable roles, and some of them were a bit surprising, but were interesting to find out. She was in the 1966 Batman show, where she went uncredited as the scrub woman in the episode The Minstrel Shakedown. I had no idea she was in that episode. I love the 66 Batman, so I'm going to have to rewatch that episode because I didn't know that she was in it. And I'll also be reviewing that show down the line, so it'll be interesting to see where exactly she is. She was in Mad Monster Party, where she voiced the monster's mate. She had her own show called The Phyllis Diller Show, which ran from 1966 to 1967, where she played a series regular, Felicia Pruitt, for 30 episodes. She was in an episode of Get Smart, called Pheasant Under Glass, where she went uncredited as Maxwell Smart. An episode of Night Gallery called Pamela's Voice, where she voiced Pamela. An episode of The Muppet Show, where she played herself. 2 episodes of Love Boat, where she played Viola Penny in one, and Martha Morse in the other. She played Jonathan Winters' mother in the TV film Jonathan Winters on the Ledge, so another tie-in to Jonathan Winters. These comedians that Scooby-Doo's are bringing in have connections with each other, which is crazy. An episode of Full House, where she plays herself. An episode of Boy Meets World, where she plays Madame Ospinkaya. An episode of Sybil, where she goes uncredited as herself. She played a recurring role on The Bold and the Beautiful, where she plays Gladys Pope for a total of 18 episodes. The movie Bug's Life, where she voices the Queen. An episode of King of the Hill, where she voices Lillian. An episode of The Wild Thornberrys, where she voices Samantha. An episode of Hey Arnold, where she voices Mitzi. 2 episodes of The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, where she voices Grandma Neutron. An episode of The Powerpuff Girls, where she voices Mascara. 3 episodes of Family Guy, where she voices Thelma Griffin. And an episode of Boston Legal, where she plays herself. So at the time of this episode, Phyllis Diller wasn't really doing anything besides this particular episode. In 1972, this was all she did. She made her appearance on the new Scooby Doo movies, and then that was it. She may have done stuff before or after the year before or the year after this, but in this particular year, she had nothing going on besides the new Scooby Doo movies. At least nothing that I could find. Sadly, at the time of recording this, Phyllis Diller has since passed away. She passed away on August 20th, 2012, with her final role being on the TV show The Bold and the Beautiful, which ran from 1996 to 2012, Like I said, she played a recurring role on that show, so. Now, what's my experience with Phyllis Diller? I'm not exactly familiar with Phyllis Diller. She's very much a new person to me, like the past two guest stars have been. I'm not very familiar with her as a female comedian. Obviously, she's a big influence as one of the first female comedians. But I'm not a fan of her work. I've never really seen her in anything. The only exposure I seem to have to her is her uncredited appearance in the 1966 Batman show, which I didn't even know she was in, but that's awesome. And she played Granny Neutron in The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. I loved Jimmy Neutron as a kid. Jimmy Neutron was one of my favorite Nickelodeon shows, and her voice did sound familiar when I was, and now I realize, oh yeah, she played Jimmy Neutron's grandmother. So that was really cool. I like that. But otherwise, outside of those two things, I'm not too familiar with Phyllis Diller and her stand-up comedy or comedic roles or whatever. So I want to ask you guys, what's your experience with Phyllis Diller? Are you a big fan of hers? Not so much, and what do you think of her, appearance in this episode, teaming up with the Scooby Gang? You think it was a good pairing, or not so, or not really? So as per usual, I'll be watching Season 1, Episode 6 of the new Scooby Doo Movies on the new Scooby Doo Movies, the Almost Complete Collection. As I bring up with every episode review, this is where I watch. It has the new Scooby Doo Movies, the Almost Complete Collection, has every single episode of the new Scooby Doo Movies, except for one episode, which is the Addams Family episode. If you want more on why, you can go check out that video on why the Addams Family episode isn't in it. But as far as this episode's reception goes, I believe most fans consider this episode to see at least average, because I've not heard many good or bad things about it, which leaves me to believe that since it's not talked about a lot, I'm assuming that this is a very average episode that's viewed by fans, or isn't a very remarkable one. So why don't we take a look at the episode to see whether I think it is a good or bad episode of the new Scooby Doo Movies. The episode begins with Mr. Ink walking out of the cinema after watching a double movie feature called The Island of Ghost and The Creeping Phantom, and Shaggy and Scooby reminisce about the movie The Creeping Phantom. I don't know if they saw both movies, but they definitely saw the movie The Creeping Phantom, and Shaggy and Scooby are on edge because it's like a dark, spooky night, and they just watched a horror movie, and I don't know why these two would watch a horror movie. I mean, I know Shaggy in the original series talked about how he was excited to watch a horror movie, and maybe they do like horror movies, but maybe they were just on edge and scared because, like, of the dark atmosphere, at night. Like, they found it creepy. Regardless, the gang encounter a stray poodle in the street and notice the dog's diamond-studded collar, and they decide to follow the collar's address to return the dog to its owner. Upon entering, they discover the dog belongs to actress Phyllis Diller. Diller claims her mansion is haunted by the ghost of her late husband's, and Shaggy and Scooby notice they're being watched by paintings and statues as they roam the mansion hallways. However, the gang don't believe them, and believing they're just being their usual anxiety-filled selves, and are probably just on edge and just seeing and hearing things. This goes on for a while, too. I don't know who's watching them. It could be the villains of the episode. It could be just one of the suspects of the episode. It could be just a random person out on the fucking streets for all I know. I have no clue who's watching them. But I'm going to assume it was the villains of the episode. Or at least one of the suspects. A loud noise is suddenly heard from the library. And upon investigating, they find the crime scene ransacked. Diller guesses that the mansion was broken into by a thief attempting to steal her jewelry, which is hidden in a safe location. There, they find a handbag initialed MM, supposedly being the perpetrator's initials. At least that's what the gang believes it to be. But the thief grabs the bag with the MM initials, and Fred, Daphne, and Velma split off from Shaggy, Scooby, and Phyllis Diller, and I think her butler, Lucas, who were moving on, going elsewhere, because Diller was showing them the house. And they decide to follow the thief's footprints outside to the cemetery, where the footprints soon end. However, one of the gargoyle statues comes to life, and attacks them and chases them into an Egyptian tomb. Now, this never gets fucking answered, like, at all. Like, we do not find out who this gargoyle is. I don't know if this is a real gargoyle that just came to life. I don't know if it's one of the villains that was in the gargoyle costume and was trying to spook the gang. I don't know if it was one of the other suspects doing it. No clue who this gargoyle is, what he has to do with the episode. I don't even know if it's the villains, or if it's just this random person dressed up as a gargoyle, or if this gargoyle is actually real and just chases them. It's a very odd scene, but it's an interesting chase scene for sure. Seeing Fred, Daphne, and Velma being chased by this gargoyle who we don't know who it is.
Don't look now, but I think someone's behind us. Yes!
In here.
What's down there?
Who cares? That thing's right behind us.
Come on!
Oh, wow. It looks like an old Egyptian tomb.
Well, you know what I always say. When in Egypt, do like the Egyptians do. Look! 3 mummies!
And no poppies.
Nobody home.
Gone to Mummyapolis.
This way!
No, this way! Move it! We've got to get back to Miss Diller.
Yeah, Shaggy and Scooby will be getting worried.
After escaping the gargoyle, Fred, Daphne, and Velma rejoin Shaggy, Scooby, and Phyllis Diller, and Diller accuses the ghost of her 4th husband, Rudolph, of being the thief. However, a messenger appears at the door. The messenger is named Misto. He claims that the ghost of Wilbur, Diller's 1st husband, had summoned her to the Magic Mansion. Diller accepts the invitation, but Velma suspects the invitation as the initials of Magic Mansion match those on the bag. So they decide to accompany Phyllis Diller to Magic Mansion, believing that whoever tried to steal her jewels is employed there or lives there or whatever. So still, they travel to the Magic Mansion and meet the receptionist Alberto, who leads them to the medium, Madame Zokar. Hosting a seance, Zokar summons Wilbur's ghost. But due to Zokar's unprofessional nature, Velma suspects her and Alberto of attempting to fool Diller. And it's not just them either. Everybody, is listening in on them. I think Misto's in the corner off listening to them. Because of Madame Zokar's weird behavior, she looks a bit suspicious too. And then you got Alberto, who leads them there into the seance, and he's focused in on it. The ghost then tricks Diller into revealing the location of the hidden jewelry, stating that it can only be accessed at midnight. Velma deduces that the magicians at the Magic Mansion are the jewel thieves attempting to steal Diller's jewelry. However, before they can escape, the mansion is placed under lockdown, trapping them inside the building. So the gang and Phyllis Diller try to come up with a way of how they can escape the mansion and get back to Phyllis Diller's house in order to stop whoever the thieves are after her jewels. So Fred comes up with the idea of hiding Shaggy and Scooby in 2 boxes and carrying them out, while Fred, Daphne, Velma, and Phyllis Diller wear these kind of workers' clothes to blend in. So after Shaggy hides inside a box and foils Alberto's magic trick along with Scooby, Mystery Inc. escapes the mansion by disguising themselves as movers carrying the box out of the mansion. I like the magic trick scene because it's very hilarious how Shaggy and Scooby are in the scene, how goofy they are. It's a nice, funny scene that, it just is entertaining. Like, it's probably the most entertaining part of the episode, because this episode doesn't have many moments that are really amazing. But this one's pretty funny. I just like how Shaggy and Scooby mess with Alberto and his magic trick, and then they're scared of getting sawed in half, and they eventually run away from it. So I like the magic trick scene. I think it's funny, it's entertaining, it's a nice break of comedy before we move on with the plot of the episode.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I will perform my famous sawing a person in half trick.
Uh-oh. Oh, no!
I would like a volunteer from the audience, please.
Hey, wait a minute!
Aha! We already have a volunteer. I will now saw the gentleman in half.
Hold it! Like I'm not a cut-up! We're getting subdivided! You take that end and I'll take this end!
He's sawing Shaggy and Scooby.
Oh, it's okay, Daphne. It's just a trick. Now watch.
I will now slip these two boards into the box. Now, will the gentleman in the box please put out his head and feet so the audience can see them? Just an optical illusion, folks. Now, will the gentleman in the box please put his head and his feet out?
You fellas were great. Just great.
Get us out of here!
Keep your heads and feet inside.
We'll roll you out like a couple of boxes.
Scooby-Doo!
Look, if you want to get out of this magic mansion, stay in there and keep quiet.
Okay, but don't stand me on my head.
What's in the boxes?
Part of the magic act, dearie. And I am the magic, n'est-ce pas?
Okay, move it out.
They then drive to the Mystery Machine back to Diller's mansion to stop the burglars, but the thieves cut down a tree, causing it to collapse onto the road and blocking their path. They then use a false detour sign to mislead Mystery Inc., causing them to get lost and accidentally drive onto a raft floating down the river. They eventually arrive back on land by driving on a lowered drawbridge and arrive at Diller's mansion just before midnight. As Diller does not answer the doorbell, Mystery Inc. enters the mansion through a window, though they are seen by a very nosy neighbor who mistakes them for burglars, and the police are summoned. They then find Misto inside, though he quickly disappears, and we never find out why Misto was at Phyllis Diller's house. I don't know if he had the same idea as the villains, or if he's just being weird. Searching the mansion for Diller, they find two masked thieves with these blue phantom masks, kinda, and they look goofy as shit sometimes, especially when they smile and think they got the upper hand. They look really goofy, like they're not threatening or menacing at all. The two masked thieves chase Mystery Inc. around the mansion, and while they evade the thieves, they attempt to follow the thieves to apprehend them. Once they lose the thieves. They find Diller bound and gagged inside a grandfather clock, and the police arrive just in time to confront the thieves attempting to open the safe. It was very quick, and out of nowhere, the police came very lightning fast. The thieves turn out to be Alberto and some unnamed accomplice, one of his henchmen, never know who he is, who deceived Diller to acquire her jewelry. Honestly, it could have been any of them, but yeah, Alberto works, I guess. Honestly, Misto was more suspicious than him, and then you had Madame Zokar, who was in the in the laundry basket. I don't know why she was there either. I think it's explained that she's the butler's wife, but still, like, you know, does she have, like, motives too? Like, is there a reason why she's there? Like, it's very confusing why, you know, these other suspects are here. Besides Lucas, because Lucas is Phyllis Diller's butler. They then find the butler, Lucas, who is revealed to be Zokar's husband, but he was locked in the basement by Alberto. And so the episode ends with the perpetrators being handed over to the authorities, and Diller offers Mr. Inc. a reward for stopping the jewel thieves, but Fred politely declines. I'm going to give Season 1, Episode 6 of the new Scooby Doo Movies 2 stars out of 5. So yeah, this episode was pretty disappointing. I can see why it's not very viewed very highly by the Scooby Doo fandom. It's not a very memorable episode. But we'll start off with the positives and the things I like about the episode before we get into what, you know, makes this episode not great for me. So starting with the positives, I thought most of the gang were good except for Daphne. I'll get onto that later on why I think Daphne wasn't great. But the gang were all good. I like that they did this good deed of bringing back Phyllis Diller's dog to her. And, you know, they helped stop a robbery happening at Phyllis Diller's home. You know, her losing her jewels. So they were very good in this episode, and they had great chemistry with each other. And I also like that the gang went to go see a horror movie at the cinema. I think that's really cool. It kind of harkens back to Scooby Doo, Where Are You?, where I love seeing moments where the gang are just being teenagers, you know, just having fun, just doing what teenagers would do, like going to the movie theaters together and seeing a horror movie that just came out. So Fred, I thought, was a good leader in the episode, and I think he had, you know, he helped forward the mystery, he helped, you know, forward the plot of the episode, and he kind of, you know, led everyone on where they need to go next, and he had good chemistry with Phyllis Diller in this episode. Him and Phyllis Diller played off each other well. Velma, I also think, helped lead the episode very well. I think her and Freddie were pretty like leader heavy in this episode, and as well as, you know, finding the clue in the episode. There was only really one clue, but she did find the bag of the thief, so she found that. But Velma was mostly pretty much a leader in this episode, like Fred. And Shaggy and Scooby, I thought, were pretty funny in this episode. They were very cowardly in this episode, like, not just after seeing the horror movie, they were really on edge in this episode. They did not want to go anywhere. They didn't like seeing the ghost at Phyllis Diller's house. They didn't like all the watching. They found the atmosphere in the night to be dark. They were just very on edge throughout this entire episode, and they didn't want to deal with this crap. But they were pretty entertaining and funny, especially in that magic trick scene with Alberto. I think that was their best showcase. But yeah, they were pretty entertaining, but they were very cowardly in this episode, very on edge, you know, just being their usual selves. Next, I thought that there was a good number of suspects in this episode. So we had 4 suspects in the episode, and we had 2 villains, unless if we want to count the gargoyle. But even if you count the gargoyle, which we still have no idea who that gargoyle is. It could have been any one of the other 2 suspects, or it could have been the actual villains of the episode. Either way, I just stick to the 2 villains, and to me, 4 suspects is pretty good. You have Lucas, you know, Phyllis Diller's butler. You have Madame Zokar, who's the medium. You have, you know, Misto, who's the messenger. And you have Alberto, who's kind of the receptionist and, you know, helps, you know, set up the seance. They were all very suspicious. Lucas was probably the least suspicious out of all of them. He didn't really strike any suspicion. But again, like, he could have been... But he still counts as a suspect. And I thought there was a good amount of suspects. There was suspicion everywhere, and there's even a hint that maybe, possibly, Alberto might not have been the only one who probably wanted those jewels, because I don't know, Madame Zokar and Misto, they acted very strange. I could easily have seen them also thinking the same thing as Alberto, but Alberto beat them to the punch, and so they just took the L. Either that, or they were just there for no reason other than to be suspicious. But I thought the number of suspects were good. It helped keep us guessing, especially, since all of them were acting weird and strange and listening in on Phyllis Diller's seance and her telling her, supposed, dead husband about where the jewels are. The final positive of the episode for me is the guest star herself, Phyllis Diller. Phyllis Diller is the first guest star that I feel very neutral about. I don't consider her good, but I don't consider her bad either. There's good aspects to her, but there's also some stuff that I'm like, you could have maybe done a little bit better with that. I don't think Phyllis Diller ruined this episode. I just think maybe she could have had a couple more moments to help, make her a stronger guest star. But I think for this episode, it worked. She was fine. I think she was all right. She's okay. She worked for the episode. But she's not one of the stronger guest stars. But I do think Phyllis Diller has a very, very vibrant personality. It really shows in the episode. She has her moments of wanting to stop the theft of the jewels. And, obviously, like I said before, she has good chemistry with Fred. But I felt she didn't really take things too seriously. Like, even though she wanted to help with the mystery, of stopping, the jewel theft, she didn't seem too worried about it. Maybe it's because she was rich and she's like, whatever, if it gets stolen, it gets stolen. I'll just report it. I got plenty of money already. Maybe she's at that point. I don't know. But I don't know. I would still at least be concerned if I knew someone was getting ready to steal some jewels that I own. And she was very chill about the ghost and thieves throughout the episode. Like, I do like that she was pretty chill and laid back, and she didn't really care about the ghost. She's like, yeah, I got ghosts in these house, it's whatever. They're just my dead husbands. With the thieves, I kind of feel like, I don't know why she was very chill about it, I think she was definitely a little bit too chill. Like, I do like her chill, vibrant personality feel. And I would be chill most of the episode too, but at the same time, you do need some moments to, like, a guest star should help forward the mystery and have good chemistry with the gang. She has a little bit of both, but she doesn't have enough to where I consider her a really good guest star. She doesn't help forward the mystery too much. And she only has chemistry with Fred, so she works for the episode and she's fine and she's good and all that. But she could have been a little bit stronger. I just think maybe she was a little bit too relaxed about the possibility of her jewels being stolen. And maybe, like I said before, maybe it was because of how rich she is that maybe she didn't mind. She was like, whatever, or maybe she had faith that these kids could Mystery Inc. could help stop this theft. She has a lot of faith in them then. But overall, I think Phyllis Diller didn't hurt the episode at all. I think she was a fine guest star. Maybe could have had a little bit of tweak and improvement, but I don't think that's really on her. Like, her personality was great. Like, I felt like she played off, at least with Fred, well. And, she was entertaining. She was funny. She just, wasn't given much to do, which isn't really her fault. It's just whoever wrote the episode just didn't give much for her to do to help with the mystery. Now let's get on to the negatives of the episode and what really brings this episode down for me. And we'll start off with the one gang member who didn't really work for me, and that was Daphne. Daphne felt completely useless in this episode. I felt she didn't really provide anything for the episode, and she could have easily not been there, and nothing really would have changed much. She just didn't have anything going for her. And that's a shame, because the last couple of episodes have done pretty well with the gang. This is the first episode in a little bit that, we have like a weak member of the gang. And that's not necessarily, Daphne's fault. It's just how she's written in the episode. She's just not given anything to do. And I feel like that's a shame. She wasn't utilized well. And so in my opinion, I feel like Daphne was not utilized well. She was very poorly utilized. And she just felt pretty useless in this episode and didn't feel like she needed to be there. I want her to be there, obviously. She's one of the members of the gang. Of course I want her to be strong. I don't like that she's, you know, useless and weak in this episode, but unfortunately she is, and I can't lie about that. She just didn't work for me in this episode. I felt like she could have been utilized better, but she wasn't. Next, we have the villains of the episode, and honestly, I think both villains sucked ass. Like, they were terrible. So you have these two blue men, or phantoms, if you even want to call them that. Like, all they have is, like, a blue face. Not really enough to constitute being considered a phantom. And they were very lame and goofy. They were lame. They were not threatening. They were not scary. They were not funny or entertaining. They were pretty generic and boring. And they were goofy because of the way their faces looked every time they were smiling. They looked awful. Their teeth would look goofy as shit. I looked like I couldn't take these guys seriously. Like, it was ridiculous. So these villains, down the trash can, they stink. Like, they were not that great. Awful villains. And the gargoyle, too, if you want to count that. The gargoyle stinks, too. The only reason I showed that scene was because of the fascination of who exactly this gargoyle is. Like, that's really the mystery here. Like, who the hell was that gargoyle? Was it Alberto? Was it his unnamed accomplice? Was it Madame Zokar? Or Lucas? Or, you know, Misto? Was it a real gargoyle? I need an answer on that gargoyle. Who the fuck is this gargoyle? But yeah, the gargoyle wasn't great either. So, I mean, if you want to count the gargoyle as a villain too, he wasn't really that amazing either. The villain department was really lackluster. Just weren't great. They stinked. Outside of costume, I kind of found Alberto to be pretty uninteresting. He didn't really do anything except be present at Phyllis Diller's seance. He didn't really stand out of the pack. Like, Madame Zokar, she was, like, the one performing the seance, and Misto was the messenger, and, you know, was acting suspicious beforehand. Alberto was, like, he was suspicious, but he didn't really have much presence throughout the episode, and he didn't really do anything. He didn't add any sort of lore to the villains. He didn't really have, you know, a great motive or anything like that, or plan. You know, there wasn't anything there for him. So I feel like outside of costume, Alberto was a pretty lame villain, and we never know who this unnamed accomplice is. He never gets a name, so we don't know who he is. So yeah, Alberto, he stinked. He added nothing to the episode outside of costume. I found the motive of the villains to be very generic and boring. I didn't really care for their motive. Their motive was pretty much they wanted to rob Phyllis Diller of her jewels. Plain and boring. You know, not really any spice there. It really was uninteresting, their motive, and I can't really... It's not an interesting one. I can't really get behind it. It's not creative because, like, this is just a straight-up money motive, and it's uninteresting, so I'll leave it at that. Next, I really found the mystery of the episode to be very boring and uninteresting. I didn't really care who ransacked the room, because they didn't really find what they were after, which was the jewels. But I also didn't care because it was just too realistic and generic of a mystery, and it didn't have enough intrigue and flavor to it. When you're, like, I'm not saying, like, you can't have, like, a real world motive like robbery for, you know, jewels. But I feel like with Scooby-Doo, you want at least a little more flavor to it, you know, at least some uniqueness to the villain's motive, and not just something that you would see any old person out on the street do. And I feel like these guys really didn't need to dress up. For all I would have, it wouldn't have. They could have just had, like, black ski mask, and it would have accomplished the same thing. Like, it really did not matter what they wore. Because they were robbers at the end of the day, and it was an uninteresting mystery. I didn't really care because they didn't accomplish what they did, and because, like, it's just too realistic in my opinion. Like, I'm not here to see, like, a real-time realistic thing like robbery or ransacking of a room. I want to see like a nice, unique motive. Something that's very unique, a unique mystery. Like, why is this ghost haunting this place? Why is this monster, after this person? Something like that. And I just felt like this episode did not provide that. So I found the mystery to be very weak, uninteresting. It really could have used some more flavor to it to make it more interesting. But as is, it wasn't that great. A minor negative that I have with the episode as well is the lack of clues in the episode. There was really only one clue in the episode, which was the MM initialed bag. That was it. And while that was a good clue, we should have had more clues to help throw suspicion on other suspects and kind of help narrow down the list of suspects for people so maybe they have like a greater chance of guessing, because in my mind the MM initial bag doesn't do anything, because it's like, okay, it's from Magic Mansion, but 3 of them are from Magic Mansion except for Lucas, so that doesn't really eliminate much, maybe besides him. So it just like the clues didn't really do much. It was a good clue and it helped point towards the gang that, hey, Magic Mansion MM, maybe we better investigate and go with Phyllis Diller, because somebody there might be the thief that was after her jewels. And they were right, but I wish there would have been more clues to help kind of, throw suspicion on to others. More clues to help throw suspicion on Alberto and Misto and Madame Zokar and Lucas, and help narrow down things so that way we could, maybe have a greater chance of guessing who the villain might be. Next, I found the atmosphere of the episode to be pretty non-existent. I felt no tension or suspense in Phyllis Diller's mansion or in Magic Mansion. I just didn't really get any creep factor from it. I felt no threat, because they're just petty hoodlums. They're just petty thieves stealing a rich woman's jewels. Not really something to be scared of. Yes, robbers can be dangerous if they have weapons, but these guys, to our knowledge, do not have weapons. The closest they get to threatening is sawing down that tree. Had they kept that saw, maybe I might have considered them threatening, but they didn't, and they had nothing else in the episode, so the villains didn't add to it, and I didn't get a natural sense of fear or tension or suspense, and I didn't fear for the gang's safety at either location, because the episode just didn't really have anything there to help provide that. There just wasn't anything really there. The closest we get to threatening is, like I said, those 2 blue men sawing down the tree. That's it. That's the closest they get to threatening. And even then, that's not even at either of the locations. It's on the way from Magic Mansion to Phyllis Diller's house. And finally, a minor negative that I have with the episode as well is the setting. I like the variety of the setting. I found Phyllis Diller's mansion to be cool. I like that we got to go to Phyllis Diller's mansion, and, we also had Magic Mansion, and we had little locations like the gang being out on the streets in front of the movie theaters, driving in between, in the woods and on the drawbridge. But Magic Mansion and Phyllis Diller's mansion were the main 2 locations of the episode, and while I like the variety of mansions, because you had Magic Mansion, which wasn't as scary, but it felt like an entertainment venue. It looked like it anyway. Like, there was a bunch of rooms. It seemed like it was more of an entertainment kind of mansion, especially with that magic show. And Phyllis Diller's mansion was nice and grand as well, because there was like cool things throughout the house, and she had like a graveyard in her backyard, maybe like a family graveyard. I don't know, but besides that, besides finding Phyllis Diller's mansion kind of cool, I found that neither location was really scary or intriguing to me. They were cool, and they had cool things in them, but they weren't necessarily scary or intriguing or interesting. There just wasn't really much there for the setting to kind of help with the creepiness of the episode, or the sense of danger that the gang could be going up against these, thieves. So while I don't consider the setting to be too awful, it's not that unique of a setting. We've had mansions in Scooby-Doo before, and while it has cool stuff in it and all that, it's nothing standout. It's nothing we haven't seen before. We've seen plenty of mansions before, and this one didn't really stand out from the others. Overall, guys, I would not recommend this episode to fans and newcomers of the show. It just was a very disappointing and lackluster episode that could have been stronger in some areas. To me, it's very forgettable. It's not the worst episode of the series. I don't consider it an awful episode, but I do see why Scooby-Doo fans, don't really talk about this episode, and it's not viewed very highly. It's because it's just a very disappointing episode that doesn't really have much to it. It just is lacking in a lot of areas, and while it's not, like I said, it's not the worst episode I've seen, it could have been easily a 3 had they cleaned up a little bit with certain stuff. But it's like a high 2. Like, it's not like completely below average, but it's close to it. But again, like, it's not the worst episode I've seen in the new Scooby Doo movies. I'm sure we'll see way worse episodes. This one's just very, very bland, kind of forgettable, and just a lackluster episode that could have improved in a lot of areas. But it's no fault on the guest star, Phyllis Diller. She did what she could, but she could not save this episode from the many flaws it had. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please give it a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on the episode. Do you like this episode? Do you think I'm being too harsh on it? Do you see some more positives in it than I do? If so, I would love to hear it. Do you hate this episode? I'd be interested in that as well. Like, do you consider it one of the worst of the series? Like, do you think it, had more negatives than I mentioned? Or are you somewhere in the middle where you just think it's okay, but it's not, that it's not good, it's not bad? Maybe you're somewhere like me where, you kind of think it's like teetering towards below average, and that it's lacking in some areas and is a very forgettable and lackluster episode that could have been better. I'm curious for your thoughts, so let me know. And subscribe for more Scooby-Doo content like this, or if you're just interested in any of my other content, I will have plenty more Scooby-Doo content on the way, because Scooby-Doo is going to be the focus of my summer special, and I cannot wait to tackle more of the new Scooby-Doo movies along with re-reviews of Scooby-Doo Where Are You for the entire summer. It's going to be a blast, so if you are a diehard Scooby-Doo fan like me and love the Scooby-Doo content that's on this channel so far, then buckle up, because we're going to have a lot of reviews, and I'm excited to tackle a bunch of new Scooby-Doo movies episode, as well as updating my thoughts on older Scooby-Doo Where Are You episodes that older reviews didn't do a good job at. You can also follow me on Facebook, where I have discussions about things we talk about on both my channels, and Twitch, where I hope to live stream in the future. So in my next video, I will kick off the 2024 summer special that I have every year, that I always do, where I dedicate a summer to a specific franchise, something that I like. You guys always love, me talking about Scooby-Doo, and you love the idea of Scooby-Doo being the focus of the summer special again, and I certainly wanted that to happen as well. So yes, we will be kicking off the 2024 summer special with my re-review of Season 1, Episode 2, Scooby-Doo Where Are You? So if you want my updated thoughts on A Clue for Scooby-Doo, then look forward to that. That'll kick off my summer special. And then the video after that, we will continue our reviews of the new Scooby-Doo movies with Season 1, Episode 7 of the new Scooby-Doo movies, titled Sandy Duncan's Jekyll and Hyde, guest starring Sandy Duncan. The first episode that has the full name of the guest star in it. Like, yeah, Don Knotts had his last name in one of the episodes, but this one has Sandy Duncan's full name in it, and I think she's the only one to get her full name in the episode. And from what I remember, a lot of people seem to pretty like this episode, and Sandy Duncan does come back in a later Scooby-Doo show, Guess Who, because not just because she's the only living guest star left, but because her old episode is actually fondly remembered by a lot of people. So I'm interested to see if it still holds up, and we'll see how it goes. I'm interested to see how Sandy Duncan's episode will hold up. Hopefully, it'll be an improvement on this episode, I'm hoping. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this review. And as always, peace out.
Scooby, Scooby Doo, looking for you. Scooby, Scooby Doo, where are you? All the stars are here, waiting for you. Couldn't have a show without you. Scooby